Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clint, and today I'm talking about case study about Singapore. My group is called Chanya Chen, Chama Radio, Mullion, Terrence, all I live. Today we're talking about Singapore. So the first part we talk about is the history about Singapore. Just a brief about it. 1965, independence of Singapore from Malaysia. After they once the independence, suffered from poverty, extremely high unemployment. Base wide small market industrialization comes in, the entire operating role. Have a land area of 720.3 kilometers in 2020, population of 5.7 million people now, mostly dominated by foreigners in June 2021. So now we're moving on, 2021, Singapore GDP has grown from 7.2% approximately compared to 2020, which is minus 5.4%. Biggest contributor for GDP is the construction, as we see it, and second and third contribution of Singapore is the tech industry. So now we're moving on to price maker, which is monopoly. MRT is a mass rapid transit involving public transportation for subway station, entirely owned by the government under the Temasek Holdings in 2016, which is required for SMRT corporations due to series of breakdowns and delay. And Temasek Holdings, one of the biggest investment companies in Singapore, have a net portfolio of about 306 billion Sing dollars in 2020 under the Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's wife, not the stock market, entirely run by the state. Now, oligopoly, small number group of people working in the same sectors, like for example, power supply, state run by Singapore Power, Power Suria, Power Senoko, along with Tuas Power, and a subsidy of Singapore Power is Power Grid, which is mostly do power grid substations to maintain power source for the whole entire Singapore. And largest telecommunication companies are StarHub, Singtel, TPG Holdings, and M1. Casinos such as Marina Bay Sands, owned by Las Vegas Corporations, and Resort World Sentosa, owned by the Genting Group. Government imposes a lot of restrictions because, first of all, you need quite a lot of capital, and government restrictions also prevent a lot of accessing to that kind of business, such as casinos, because they don't want people to gamble a lot, and only foreigners can gamble. So now we're on the free market, such as food courts, such as hawker center in Singapore. We call it a cheaper alternative to go into restaurants, have a lot of food stand. Some sell the same price type of food, determining on which one's better. For example, a consumer will go there because it's better quality, price, quality, can make a competitive advantage. Since it's a free market, mean perfect competition. Now, a free market is the same thing as a free market, such as freeware, local people, blog shop clearance, mostly do e-commerce because now it's due to COVID, sell things from like antique jewelry to second-hand goods, for example. And now we're on to competitive advantage. Like we have already explained about manufacturing and construction are major advantages. Now we're talking about trade surplus, means more export than import, which Singapore does right now, meaning importing crude oil as a raw material and convert it into petroleum, diesel, whatever it is, and construction such as improving R&D research, like construction improving on buildings, rising condo, less reliance on manpower, due to shifting to globalization, and including the government policy. Now we're talking about the average GDP output per person a year or labor participation that we see in 2021. One person can contribute 137,639.7 US Sing dollars compared to 1953 under 50,000, means that people have to work harder to achieve that amount, means that standard living also goes up and salary has to goes up as well. And during the time now it's COVID, US dollar appreciate means that high inflation goes up, and also people have to work harder because they have families to feed, and those are the range in the age of 30 to 34. Now we're moving on to the future tomorrow of Singapore. We believe that big corporations or all the big corporations who want to operate in Asia have to have a HQ in Singapore, cut down on low cost labor supply by 50% more, and also to make the biggest sector for R&D research for any company or corporation in Singapore as the biggest one, because since they mostly focus on it, and less reliant on Malaysian water supply, because most of the water supply is mostly bought by Malaysia, which political reason is not good. And now I continue on to move into my another person who is talking about Singapore culture. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to my point, I'm going to talk about the cultures of Singapore. So the first things I'm going to talk about is languages and ethnicity. So Singapore is a ethnic society with Chinese, Indian, Malay, and other expectorate and national languages of Singapore is Malay, while English, Mandarin, Chinese, Tamil, and including Malay as well are the official language in Singapore. The next point I'm going to talk about is habit and interactions. So Singapore culture remain hierarchical as people interactions have become drained because of Chinese influence, and when engaging with other religious and cultural conventions are virtually always favored. And in Singapore, nonverbal play as a big part in how you communicate with other. In interactions and communications, posture and facial expressions are very essential. On the other hand, slouchings and frownings when talking to someone is considered to be very rude. Moving on to the next slide, I'm going to talk about how Singapore cultures influence business. So there are many cultural influence in Singapore business world, and the experience within Singapore business culture will vary depending on whom you're dealing with. In a multi-ethnic society comprising Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Eurasians community, in many scenarios you will encounter them, so it is important to adapt to the business culture. And the business culture influence business because of how exceedingly competitive and is based on strong work ethic, from meetings to age hierarchy to relationships and groups oriented to business entertainment, power meal, punctuality, and business gift. Moving on to the last point of my part is collective versus individualistic. So Singapore, with a score of 20, is a collectivistic society. This means that we is important. People belong to in groups, so who looking after each other in exchange for loyalty. Singapore is a collectivist society with low individualisms. People in Singapore have a high interdependence with other, and there are interpersonal sensitivity, and the Harmony Day that is celebrated every once a year, and the low conflict between ethnic groups show that Singapore is indeed a collectivist society. On the other hand, an individualist society has people that mainly focus on their needs and rather than the community. So they have a low dependency, which is not shown in Singapore. So Singapore people are highly dependent on other people. And therefore, Singapore people believe harmony is important rather than freedoms of an individual. They put the community interest on the top priority. One of the 5 national share value upheld by Singapore is the tenet that the nations come before your community and society above yourself. This amplifies how Singapore is a collective country and Singaporeans are ready and open to be influenced by others. Thank you.
Hello, Professor and everyone. My name is Solalin, and today I will talk about Singapore trade policy. What is trade policy? Trade policy is a rule or a law that a country adopts to give its country an opportunity to develop its economy and help improve domestic industrial performance to its highest level. Singapore largest trading partner. There are top 5 of the trading partner. In terms of Singapore export, we have China, Hong Kong, Malaysia, United States, and Indonesia. And in terms of Singapore import, we have China, United States, Malaysia, Asian country, and Japan. As we all can see, China is the #1 in trading partner with Singapore in terms of export and import. Singapore largest import and export product. For import, Singapore import machinery, transport equipment, and crude petroleum. For export, Singapore export machinery and refined petroleum product. And machinery is elastic product and free market type because there are a lot of companies focused on it and they are price taker. Besides, for petroleum product, on the other hand, it is inelastic and oligopoly market. Example, the OPEC, Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Country. They are controlling the price of the petroleum product, and there are only a few countries that have the petroleum refinery business, and they are price maker. Singapore trading bloc. So Singapore focus on two trading blocks. There are Association of Southeast Asian Nation that the Singapore joined in 1967. The purpose is to make the free trade agreement more better, gain economic and exchange culture. And another one is European Union and Singapore Free Trade Agreement and Investment Protection. They joined the partner in 2019. The purpose is to make investment and free trade agreement on the many stuff, to make safe investment and improve the product of their country. The percentage of domestic manufacturer and outsourcing, as we can see here in this slide, according to the dollar and cent.sg, with the total GDP of Singapore in 2019, show that there are 20.9% of manufacturing in the country. And as we all know, the Singapore labor cost is expensive, so many manufacturers choose to outsourcing and offshoring, and the percentage is between 30 to 40%. Here we talk about Singapore import tariff and import quota. For Singapore, there are not many tariff on most import products, but on the special tariff of the environment, Singapore imposes the highest tariff rate on certain products like wine, tobacco product, vehicle, and petroleum product. For example, the tariff rate on vehicle is 20% and 7% on tobacco product. In terms of import quota, according to the WTO, World Trade Organization, since Singapore has many free trade agreement and trading bloc, Singapore has no import quota on import product. Singapore export subsidy. There is an export subsidy in Singapore. The program is called MRA, stand for Market Readiness Assistance, that provides small and medium enterprise with financial assistance when expanding their product and service to overseas market. Under the MRA, companies in Singapore can receive up to 80% or 100,000 USD from the Singapore government. This is the end of my part, and I will hand it over to my teammate.
Reflecting the small open nature of its economy, Singapore has adopted an exchange rate central monetary policy framework since 1981. There are several key factors of the exchange rate mechanism that Singapore have thus. So first, Singapore dollar is regulated in relation to the bucket of the main trading partner and competitor currency. The weight of the various currency are determined by the relevance of the country to Singapore international trade connections. Second, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, also known as MAS, has operated and managing float regime for the Singapore dollars. The trade rate against rate is allowed to fluctuate within a policy band, and the rate straight to the market semi-annually. The band provides a mechanism to accommodate short-term fluctuations in the foreign exchange market and flexibility in managing an exchange rate. And for third is the dollar rate policy band is evaluated on a regular basis to ensure that it stays consistent with the economic underlying fundamental. It is important to continue assess the path of exchange rate in order to avoid misalignment in the currency value. Also, the policy review cycle will last around 6 months on average. And lastly, the choice of exchange rate as the intermediate target of monetary policy implies that MAS give out control over domestic interest rate, in Singapore are largely determined by the foreign interest rate and investor expectations of the future movement in the Singapore dollars. All around, unlike most other countries, Singapore has adapted the use of exchange rate rather than the interest rate in the instrument of monetary policy. The choice of the exchange rate is predicated on the Singapore economic small size and high degree of openness to trade and capital flow. So system success is largely due to Singapore's strong economic foundations. Next, the Singapore currency is depreciated against the US dollar in the past 10 years. The Singapore dollar tumbled to weakness in 2009 during the global financial crisis, and it may have further more to go. But on 24 August 2016, the Singapore dollar slumped to over 5-year low trend, trending from 1.42 to 1.45 Singapore dollar per USD. That's pretty low. And the MAS state that it's happened because it does not focus on any specific bilateral exchange rate, and despite greater volatility in foreign exchange market after the recent change in China exchange rate policy, and the Singapore dollar stay within its policy range. However, Singapore dollar is expected to slightly strengthen versus the US dollar in 2019 to 2022 because the current rate stand at 1.34 to 1.36 Singapore dollar per USD. And furthermore, when it came to central bank interest rate in Singapore is expected to be 0.5% by the end of this quarter. And according to the China Economic Global Macro Model and analyzes expectations, in the long term, Singapore average overnight interest rate is projected to be trend around 1% in 2022.
So let's move on to the next slide. Let's talk about Singapore financial. Singapore banking is a remarkable success story. It has become a major world finance player. Singapore, also known as one of the 4 Asian tigers, which are fast-growing economies like Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South Korea. Right now, it recognized as an international financial center, and Singapore has over 100 banks. And today I would like to bring up only 3 largest banks in the Singapore market. So top one is DBS as development bank in Singapore. When Singapore became independent in 1965, the DBS Bank was right behind. The bank was founded in 1968 and has grown rapidly to become one of the world's most important financial bank. It has been the world's best bank 3 years in a row, and it recently launched an initiative under the slogan "Live More, Bank Less" to deliver bankings that is suited for digital era. Since it established in 1968, it is considered as the largest bank in Singapore and Southeast Asia, as meant so by assets. Furthermore, it also has the largest retail network in Singapore with over 80 branches in the presence. Top 2 is Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation, or OCBC. Was established in 1912, which considered as one of the largest financial institutions in Singapore, Malaysia market, with total assets of 452.6 billion and total profit is 4.3 billion dollar with credit rating AA minus. OCBC assets are also sky high with over 3,040 billion dollars second in Singapore. On the other hand, OCBC was also named the best retail bank in Singapore and received award for excellence in digital innovation and digital wealth management. A large part of the bank business comprised remittances from Southeast Asia to China as well as foreign exchange. OCBC engaged in the provision of financial and banking service. The last one is on UOB as United Overseas. It's like a top 3 in Singapore. Was established in 1935. It's a leading bank in Singapore with a strong presence in the Asia Pacific regions. The bank is the third largest bank in Southeast Asia by total assets. UOB provides commercial and corporate banking service, personal financial service, private banking and asset management service, as well as corporate finance, venture capital investment, and insurance service also. And moreover, UOB hold a long-term credit rating of AA, which is high quality, since the bank offer a wide range of commercial and personal banking product and service. So let's move to the next slide. I would like to talk about Singapore foreign currency reserve. As we know that economy of Singapore is a highly developed free market economy. Singapore has an official foreign currency reserves almost $565.7 billion report in January 22, and as a percentage of GDP and on a per capita basis, it is the third highest in the world. For some reason, why does Singapore hold reserve? Maybe because Singapore want to serve as a buffer against the crisis, or to provide a stream of investment income, to have financial part of unusual government budgets, and to maintain confidence in Singapore exchange rate center monetary policy as well. So the next slide, I would like to talk about what are the Singapore plan with regard to digital currency. According to MAS strategy approach toward a retail CBDS for Singapore acknowledges the dynamic nature of payment landscape involving public preference and the potential of nascent technology solution. While there is no need to issue in Singapore dollar retail CBDC, at this point, it is prudence of MAS to embark an exploratory work to develop the technical policy capability for its possible insurance in the future. Moreover, a central bank digital currency has benefits such as financial inclusion or expanding access to financial service. Another reason for a digital Singapore dollar is to guard against the potential displacement of the local currency as privately issued stablecoins and foreign CBDC enter the market are digital assets that are purchased to traditional currency. Overall, Singapore dollar retail CBDC present an opportunity to construct a brand new payment architecture from the ground up to support the neglect of payment innovation. This could increase the diversity of firms that are innovation on retail payment and related service, and enable programmable money to support the digital economy. So that's all of our presentation. Thank you for listening.